Mets, the Nico Alvarez with a big time walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth inning. They cap off a victory, a 4-3 victory over the Baltimore Orioles. David Peterson with another great start. We're going to get into that a little bit later as well. We're going to start it off with that Mets versus the Orioles. What a game. What a game. Not only does it help the Mets, but it helps the Yankees. The Yankees were second in the AL East headed into that game. And now, without even playing, they're a half game above the Baltimore Orioles. So Mets, big time for both Mets and Yankees fans with a win over the Orioles. And let's get into it. Alvarez with a much-needed home run, much-needed walk-off home run. He struggled all year. That was just his sixth home run all year. And that's after hitting 25 home runs last year in his rookie year. So Alvarez, he needed that. The Mets needed that. And that celebration, it kind of hopefully is going to spark the Mets, because the Mets have been struggling as of late, even though they took two out of three in their last series. And this is a great win. This is a great win against a great team. So this is big. But for Alvarez to do it in that spot against a team like the Baltimore Orioles, I think it's going to be a momentum lift for the Mets at just the right time, because we got two big series coming up after this one as well. We're headed to San Diego and Arizona back to back. Two teams ahead of us in the wild card race, and of course the Atlanta Braves. And now we're just 1.5 games back of that third wild card spot that the Atlanta Braves own. So hopefully they can keep struggling, and the Mets, they can continue to win, because this win, I think it should propel them. The Mets need to use this as momentum. The bullpen was great. David Peterson was great. David Peterson on the year now in 14 starts. He's 7-1 with a 3 ERA overall. So you got to give props to David Peterson, the left-hander, the young left-hander. For a while, we've kind of wrote him off. I think a lot of people are starting to write him off headed into this season. But, he solidified himself as a part of this rotation, along with Sean Manaea and Luis Severino, who we're going to get into. But I think Peterson has definitely surprised a lot of fans this season. And another great start against a great Baltimore Orioles lineup. So he did exactly what the Mets needed him to do tonight, and that was shove. Jose Butto impresses again as well in an inning of work. He comes out of the bullpen and he does what he does best, and he locks it down at the end of the game for the Mets. He gets the ball into Diaz's hands, and, the Mets, surprisingly, they have a good bullpen, and that's shocking of me to say, because I feel like almost every year the Mets don't have a good bullpen. But David Stearns, in his first season, he built the Mets the Mets have a great lineup, and they have a great bullpen. They definitely don't have a great starting rotation, but you know what? They got some guys in it. David Peterson, Severino, and Sean Manaea specifically have been great for the Mets this year. Consistent for the Mets is what I should say out of the three of them. Every now and then they will get rocked. Peterson hasn't really yet, but overall the Mets starting rotation with the three of those guys, Quintana here and there, he's been up and down. And Christian Scott obviously going down with the injury. That did not help either. Adrian Hauser, that was a failed one. But now we're banking on this guy from the Oakland A's to come in and help us out. But, bullpen-wise and lineup-wise, you got to give credit to David Stearns, because he did build a good lineup and he did build a good bullpen. And Jose Butto joined in the bullpen. Not many people expected him to have a role this year on the team. But now he's solidified a role on the team. He's got a role, especially in this playoff stretch. We're going to need him down the road. And Edwin Diaz, I'm sick of hearing people saying that Edwin Diaz is having an up and down season. How is he having an up and down season? Look at his numbers since June. He's only allowed 2 earned runs since then. So, you can tell me all you want that Edwin Diaz is having an up and down year, because I feel like every time Edwin Diaz lets up a run, everybody loses their shit. It's like the end of the world. Yes, in 2022, he only let up 9 earned runs. And will he be able to do that again? I don't know. But over this past stretch, his last earned run allowed before this game was against Colorado. And he still got a save there for his 14th save of the year. Hasn't had a save since, but he's still been lights out, hasn't allowed a run. Only 2 runs allowed, like I said, since July. 2 runs allowed since July, 2 earned runs allowed since June. Yeah, man. June 13th, he comes back. and he's just been tearing it up since he's been back from that injury. So I'm sick of people actually saying that Edwin Diaz is having an up and down year. Yeah, and he had a bad stretch. He had a bad stretch for the first time since 2022. I mean, well, really, actually, since 2021. He had a bad stretch for the first time in 3 years. People lost their shit. He got hurt, comes back from his injury, and he's only allowed 2 earned runs since he's came back. So, I mean, this bullpen, you look at the bullpen, let's take a look at their overall numbers. Team-wise this year, the Mets 4.14 ERA. That's not too good. That's 18th actually in the MLB, but that's mostly due to the starting pitching because Jose Quintana, you look at his ERA, it's up there 4.26. Paul Blackburn, I mean, he had a good first start with the Mets, but his second start against his old team, Oakland, he lets up 6 runs there, so that wasn't too good. That didn't help out the Mets ERA. But you look at the bullpen. The bullpen, like I said before, is what's carrying the Mets, along with Francisco Lindor. And we're going to get into Francisco Lindor being an MVP candidate. Check out my most recent article. You can check out where I personally think he ranks up against the NL MVP candidates right now. Right now, I got Elly De La Cruz, Ketel Marte, Lindor, and Shohei Ohtani as my top 4 in the NL. But we're going to talk about that in just a bit. Let's get into the bullpen. Ottavino, we can just get rid of him at this point. You know, he's losing opportunities in high leverage moments already. Brazo Abam, he needs to get going a little bit. You know, he's been up and down since he's been brought here, but he's a guy with real potential. He's let up two earned runs across his last 2 appearances for the Mets, so he really does need to get it going. But Dendiel Nunez, when he does come back from his injury, he's got a little forearm injury right now, but in 24 games this year, he has a 2.43 ERA. You look at Danny Young, his numbers overall, they ain't too shabby either. In 26 games this year, he's got a 3.24 ERA. Sean Reed-Foley, he's got a shoulder injury right now, but his rehab assignment did get paused just 4 days ago, actually. But when he does come back, we're hoping that he's just what he was before he went down with that injury, because in 23 games, he held a 1.66 ERA. And then, you know, obviously Jose Budo and Edwin Diaz, I would call them the top 2 guys in the bullpen right now. But the Mets bullpen is actually pretty good. Going into this playoff race in the NL wild card, I'm actually happy with this bullpen. And I'm also happy with this lineup. And let's get into the lineup, because before we do get into Lindor and his MVP numbers over his last 50 games, and really all year, when you look at Lindor's numbers, they've been phenomenal. But even though he was, I believe, hitless in tonight's game, but Mark Vientos was not hitless. He did strike out 3 times, though, so that wasn't too good. But overall, his numbers are great, especially in his second season, his first real season, I'd say. 277 batting average, 19 home runs, which is phenomenal. 49 RBIs, 884 OPS. Not only has Mark Vientos been great, he's earned that second spot in the order as of late, and I think he's going to stay there. Even when Nimmo does return to the lineup, I think you do have to keep Vientos at that number 2 spot. He's just too good not to. He's having too good of a year to not hit in the top 3, top 4 at least. And you know, Martinez, he didn't hit a home run tonight, but like overall, Martinez, he's only at 2 home runs, I think, in August. So JD Martinez, he's been struggling. Brandon Nimmo has been struggling. Mark Vientos, he has not. So Mark Vientos, you need to hit him behind Francisco Lindor. Francisco Lindor has been the most consistent. He's been the best player on the Mets. To no surprise, really. He was the best player on the Mets last year, arguably the best player on the Mets in 2022. So for 3 consecutive seasons, I mean, $300 million, say it all you want. He's earned that $300 million because he's been the best player on the Mets 3 consecutive seasons. And he's second, I would say, in the NL MVP race right now. But not to talk too much about Lindor, because we're going to talk a lot about him soon. Vientos, you have to hit him behind Lindor. You just have to. With the way Lindor is hitting and with the way Vientos is hitting, you need to hit them right back to back. And then I think, you know, when Nimmo does come back, yeah, I would hit him third, because, you know, you need that left-handed bat right behind Vientos being a righty. And then I think Martinez, Alonso, and then Jesse Winker or Starlin Marte. Then obviously Francisco Alvarez. I mean, even though he hit that walk-off home run, like I said before, it's only a 6th home run on the year. So overall, Alvarez isn't really having too great of a year. But if anybody needed that walk-off, it is him. And then you got Tyrone Taylor. You can really play around with that, but I would obviously put Harrison Bader in center. And then Nimmo would be the left fielder. But with all said and done, the Mets lineup is actually really good. And I think it would be even better with Vientos hitting second for the rest of the season. Because Vientos is having too good of a year just not to. He's not only one of the best Mets hitters, he's one of the best third basemen in the entire National League this year. He's been that good. I mean, let's look at his numbers overall, where he ranks up among National Leaguers in home run, National League third basemen in home run. I know, third baseman. All right, so this year, of course, it's not showing me it. Stat Moose just sucks. All right, I'm a big Stat Moose guy, but not right now. But anyways, Vientos, he has been phenomenal this year. I mean, you look at his overall numbers; they've just been great. I mean, the 19 home runs overall on the year. I mean, he's exceeding expectations. He is exceeding expectations. There we go. The good old MLB.com. Vientos tied for 6th among all MLB third basemen in home runs. Tied with Austin Riley, Manny Machado, Alex Bregman. Like he's among the best third basemen, not just in the National League, but in the MLB right now. So you got to give credit where credit is due, and Mark Vientos deserves a lot of credit. And if he doesn't hit in the top two, he's got. I mean, not obviously he's not hitting first because Lindor, since he's taken over that leadoff spot, he's been one of the best in the game. So he's got to hit second, right behind Lindor, and I think it makes sense. Nimmo's been struggling. Martinez been struggling. Alonso, obviously, he's been lackluster, especially with runners in scoring position. Vientos needs to hit behind Lindor. It just needs to happen. He's after Lindor, he's been the second best hitter. He's been the most consistent hitter outside of Francisco Lindor all year. So you cannot bat him in the bottom of the order. You cannot. Let's hit the comments up. Jesus. Not hitting that comment up. Overall, though, Vientos, you got to hit him in the top of the order, especially with guys like JD Martinez struggling right now. Only 2 home runs since August started. So he's really got to get it going. His numbers have taken a huge dip this year, and his home run totals overall, I mean, only 13 home runs overall this year. His OPS going into today was 776. His batting average now is a 256. Martinez has got to get going. He's got to get going ASAP. So Martinez is the guy I think the Mets got to look at to really step it up, really get going, because they're going to need him down the stretch. They brought him in for a reason when they were at their best. Because since June, they've been the 4th best team in the entire MLB. And a big part of that was JD Martinez. He was the second best hitter. He was the second best hitter after Francisco Lindor. Now it's Mark Vientos, obviously, but if JD Martinez starts to get going like he was in the beginning of the year when he first came up to the Mets, then the Mets lineup will be even better and the Mets will start to win more games. They're only a game and a half back. Atlanta is struggling. They're going into their 2 most important series of the entire year. They really need JD Martinez to get going. They really do. I'm going to fix my camera real quick. We're going to get into Alonso, and then we're going to get into Lindor and his MVP numbers this year. But I'll be right back on the Jimbo Nolan podcast. Thank you for you guys who are watching. Stick with me. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. We're back live on the Jimbo Nolan pod. Thank you for you guys, whether you're watching on X, whether you're watching on YouTube. But we're talking Mets right now. We're going to get into the Yankees in a little bit. But the Mets, man, the Mets with a big win, that walk-off home run by Francisco Alvarez. Like I said before, nobody needed it more than Francisco Alvarez. So that was big. That was definitely big. But somebody who hasn't been big for the Mets all year, especially with runners on, is Pete Alonso. And this is why I want to get into this. Should the Mets re-sign Pete Alonso? If you want to participate in this little debate, you can comment on Twitter. You can comment on YouTube. I'll throw it up here on the stream. But Alonso, overall, you look at his numbers, 244 average, 803 OPS, 27 homers, and then 69 RBIs. So Alonso, yes, the power numbers, they're there. But with runners on, he's done really nothing. He's done nothing. Well, let's take a look at Pete Alonso's numbers overall with runners in scoring position. This is probably going into today. But going into today, Pete Alonso with runners in scoring positions hitting 209, on base percentage of 315, slugging percentage of 405. With the bases empty, he's been a stud. Bases empty, he's hitting 271 on the year with an OPS over 900, 340 on base percentage, 527 slugging percentage. He's got 16 home runs. So 16 of his 27 home runs have come with the bases empty. With the bases loaded, he's terrible. He's hitting 111 on the year. In late inning pressure, he's hitting 153. In late inning pressure situation with runners on base, he's hitting 91 on the year. A slugging percentage of 121. He's got 4 RBIs in late inning pressure situations this year with runners on base. That is terrible. That is not a guy who the Mets will probably want to re-sign. And as sad as that is, it is just the fact. I don't see the Mets re-signing Pete Alonso. I do not. We saw David Stearns before he was even with the Mets trying to trade for Pete Alonso, when in reality, he kind of knew he was going to the Mets the next year. So he was trying to get Pete Alonso off the Mets before he was even with the Mets. And all the rumors, I mean, what were they really going to trade Pete Alonso for? And if they trade Pete Alonso, it just shows the rest of the team that they're not going for the playoffs. And at this point, the Mets got to go for the playoffs. They're a game and a half back. They can easily do it. At this point, if they don't get to the playoffs, it's going to be disappointing. And Pete Alonso, I mean, if he just got going just a little bit at this point in the year, that's all it could possibly take for the Mets to say, hey, maybe we should re-sign this guy. Because if he does get going with runners on base, the Mets will be that much better. Because Pete Alonso is that good. He is. But over the past 2 seasons, he sucked. I mean, yeah, you can say he hits a lot of home runs, but that what does that do? With runners, when he does it with the bases empty. 16 of his 27 home runs, like I said, have come with the bases empty this year. Pete Alonso needs to step up. It's plain and simple. He hasn't had a consistent stretch. He hasn't had a hot streak. He's just been subpar all year long. So should the Mets re-sign Pete Alonso? I don't know. I don't think they should. Now, I could be wrong. It's my opinion, obviously. But based off what he's done over these past 2 seasons, I think the Mets should put their money elsewhere and think about letting Pete Alonso walk in the offseason. If he steps it up, maybe I'll change my mind. But right now, as it looks, I do not think the Mets are going to be re-signing Pete Alonso in the offseason. But one guy who is locked up long-term, he's getting paid a lot of money, and he's been the best player on the Mets for 3 consecutive years now. That's Francisco Lindor, and he leads the entire National League with a 5.9 F4. So Lindor, I mean, you take a look at his numbers over his last 50 games, 295 batting average, 12 home runs, 35 OPS, and 903 OPS. 35 RBIs, 903 OPS. Lindor's been doing it, man. Lindor's been doing it. And right now I have him at number 2 in the NL MVP ladder. If you check out the most recent, one of my most recent articles on FanSided, it came out this morning. I got Francisco Lindor sitting right behind Shohei Ohtani in the NL MVP race, and Shohei Ohtani is hitting 190 over his last 10 games. So if Ohtani goes down and Lindor trends upwards, I mean, we gotta give Lindor credit, man. He hasn't missed a game the entire year. I mean, his defense at shortstop, you got to factor that in too. Ohtani just hits. He doesn't play the field. Lindor, on the other hand, he's one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball. He's got the fifth best fielding percentage among all MLB shortstops this year. He's only committed 11 errors. In retrospect, just to put that in comparison to some of the star shortstops around the league, Elly De La Cruz, he has 27 errors. Lindor is not only playing top-notch defense, but he's carrying the Mets offensively. So, yes, he is an MVP candidate, a legitimate one, too. Could he take home if the season ended today, yes, Ohtani would win. But the season isn't ending today. And over his last 50 games, Lindor is playing much better than he was earlier in the year. So overall, his numbers, I mean, they're great. Yeah, they are great. But if he continues this trend over his last 50 games trend, the 295 batting average, 12 home runs, 903 OPS, he keeps doing that. I mean, he's going to inch closer and closer as the year comes to an end. And the Mets do need to make the playoffs for this to happen as well. Because if the Mets don't make the playoffs, we could kiss his MVP dream goodbye. But he's legitimately in the race. And I think we got to start. I think he's an underrated. I think he's a dark horse candidate. And a legit dark horse candidate. Because Ketel Marte, he's probably going to be hurt for a couple weeks now with the ankle injury. I mean, over his last 8 games, every time he's over the last over the Diamondbacks' last 8 games, every time Marte has stepped into the game, he's been pulled out. So they got to put him on the IL soon, like a 10-day IL stint, because he's got to get some rest. They're going to need to rest him because he's hurt. He's hurt. Elly De La Cruz, I mean, their strikeouts, the Reds they're out of the playoff race right now. I don't think he's going to take home the award. So right now, it's just Ohtani and Lindor. Are they neck and neck? No, but they might be very soon. So I think right now, it is Ohtani's award to lose, but Lindor is right up there with him. He is right up there with him. And over his last 10 games, Ohtani sucked. He has sucked. Lindor, on the other hand, I mean, he's been on a tear. He's been on an absolute tear. His hidden streak, I believe, was at 13 games. It just ended tonight, but I mean, over his last 50 games, is he a legit MVP candidate? Yes, he is. But the Mets are going to need more than just Lindor, and we've seen that as of late a little bit. Because even when Lindor does go off, there are some games where the Mets just can't win. They can't figure it out. But Luis Severino, I mean, the Mets are getting their money's worth out of him. 24 starts this year is most in a long, long time. I believe his most since 2018. And overall this year, he's got a 3.91 ERA, 117 strikeouts, 8-6 record, and then 8 strikeouts, 9 shutout innings in his most recent start against the Marlins, man. I mean, Sevy, this is prime time Sevy, man. That's what the Mets just got in their most recent start. And if they get this Severino down the stretch, I mean, they need Manaea, David Peterson, and Luis Severino. Those 3 guys, if they continue to do what they've been doing as of late, the Mets could have 3 legit playoff starters. And who's going to be the 4th? I have no clue. They need to figure that out. But, I mean, man, Sevy, he's given the Mets fans confidence in this rotation as of late. That was a big-time start out of him. And I believe he has the most starts in the National League where he's gone 8 innings. So, good for him. Good for him. He's needed that. He's needed a durable season and a good season, and he's having both. Sean Manaea, his last start was great too. He went 7 innings, only 3 earned runs allowed. Got his 9th win on the season. Now he's 9-5 with a 3.46 ERA, 129 strikeouts, and 130 innings of work this year. Good for him, man. He's got to keep it up. The Mets need him down the stretch as well, because the Mets are going to be headed into a very important series against San Diego and then Arizona. So right now, tomorrow night, they got Quintana on the mound. They really can't afford to lose. They really can't. And then Sean Manaea going up against Baltimore, which means he's going to line up against Arizona. So that's big. And Sevy, he's going to be on the bump in game 1 against the San Diego Padres. So they got to figure that out. I'm going to leave the studio real quick and come back. So this camera fixes. I'll be right back. There. All right, we're back. Hopefully this camera stays intact, because it's starting to piss me off a little bit. But Severino, we got him game 1 on the bump against San Diego. That's going to be probably the biggest series all year. And then Arizona is going to be the biggest series all year too. So the Mets, they're in their toughest part of their schedule right now. They're in the thick of it right now. They're in the thick of the playoff race. They're only a game and a half back of that third wild card spot. And obviously, 2 teams they need to jump ahead, or they would like to jump ahead, is San Diego and Arizona. And they're going to need their guys. They're going to need Sevy. They're going to need everybody, man. They're going to need everybody. Quintana tomorrow night against Baltimore. And then Sean Manaea going in game 3 Wednesday in that day game. And then Sevy game 1 against San Diego. And that means we're probably going to get Manaea on the bump against Arizona at some point, which is big because he's been probably the most consistent Met starter all year. And then David Peterson will probably also line up against Arizona as well. So the Mets do have some important starters going up against the 2 most important teams on their schedule in this next stretch of games. So hopefully they can get the job done. Hopefully they can have starts like they have had recently. And we just need them to get the job done, because the Mets need starting pitching badly. And if those 3 guys can be consistent down the stretch, the Mets will be fine. So a game and a half back. Let's see if they can cap it off. But I can't lie, I am very nervous headed into these next 2 series. But we gotta get business done against Baltimore first before we even get to these 2 teams. So let's get Baltimore done. It's a very good team that we're playing right now. Francisco Alvarez needed that walk-off home run. Big win. Need the momentum. So hopefully they can use this win as a lift. Let's get into some football talk. Actually, before we get into football talk, let's talk some Yanks. Before we talk Yanks, I am going to take a quick break because we just went 28 minutes on the Mets. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to get into some Yankees talk. Jazz Chisholm, he's doing some fielding work right now. He's expecting to swing a bat pretty soon, so hopefully he's back. Clark Schmidt, we got some good news out of him. He's throwing live BP. So the Yankees are getting some reinforcements back soon, hopefully. And their bullpen continuing to struggle. Clay Holmes, not a good one yesterday. Mark Leiter, Brian Cashman, his trade deadline moves, they were terrible. So we're going to talk about that in just a quick second. We'll be back right after the break. One guy who's been a lot more consistent than he was last year, who I want to get into on the offensive end, Anthony Volpe. I mean, he's living up to the hype that he had last year. Obviously, he performed well on the defensive side, capturing that Gold Glove award, hitting over 20 home runs. But this season, a little bit less home runs, but the batting average has seen an increase. The on-base percentage has seen an increase. And then obviously his speed on the base paths always kills opposing teams. So what do you think Anthony Volpe is doing differently this year than last that he's seen so much more success from?
Yeah, well, first in the field, he's always been great defender. So I don't think there was much to improve there. But on the offensive side, I think he's really just trying to hit the ball the other way more, be more consistent, make more solid contact, and he's been able to do it. I love when you try to make adjustments, you realize what was working, what wasn't working, and you make an adjustment in the offseason, and you come back and it works. That's something you love to see. So he's been definitely, obviously, with the higher average and getting on base more. But when you look at the actual mechanics of the swing, he's leveling out a little bit more. The bat path is more through the zone. He's not trying to pull the ball as much and lift it. It seems like the home runs come, but he's able to really go with the pitch the other way. And that's what you need. Out of this offense, the way it's structured, if you have a guy like that at the top of the lineup getting on base, you have Juan Soto to follow, Aaron Judge to follow. Those guys are the ones who are going to really drive the ball even more in the air. But you have a guy like Volpe who could at least get on base with a single or just tap one to the opposite field, kind of like Jeter in a way where he had that inside out swing. It helps out so much. So just understanding the lineup, how it's constructed, and then seeing how he's been able to make adjustments to then fit that lineup even better. That's why I think the Yankees have been pretty solid on the offensive side, at least with the first half of the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Judge, he has insane numbers, and we're going to get into him in a little bit. His last 50 games, he has 55 RBIs, and I think, like you alluded to, a big part of that is because Volpe is doing such a great job hitting in front of those guys. I feel like he's kind of realized, okay, I got two of the best hitters in baseball right behind me. All I got to do is get on base, and they can do the rest. Like you said, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, they're going to clean up in that lineup. So I think it's been great for Volpe to kind of change his ways. Like you said, those adjustments that he made over the offseason, they're really paying off, not just for him, but for the team overall. I think that's he's been a big reason, and I think an underrated piece on this team. I mean, obviously Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, and now Garrett Cole coming back, and even Louis Hill is the story, but Anthony Volpe at all right, let's get into the Yankees. They are losers of 2 in a row to the Detroit Tigers. Debacle in extra innings in their most recent game on Sunday Night Baseball in that Little League World Series Classic. Really, outside of Jazz Chisholm Jr. hanging out with the kids, hanging out with the Little League World Series players, Yankees fans really were just pissed off. They were pissed off. The bullpen continues to be the low point of the Yankee season. Judge and Soto, they're obviously probably 2 AL MVP candidates. Judge is definitely going to walk home with the award this year, but his second, by the way, too. But yeah, the bullpen just sucks. Bullpen just flat out sucks. Clay Holmes, he leads the MLB with 10 blown saves this year. He's the first Yankee with 10 blown saves since 1987. Mark Leiter, since he's been a Yankee, he's got a 6.48 ERA in his 10 appearances. And he's only got 8.1 innings of work in those 10 appearances. So it just goes to show you how terrible he's been. And did Brian Cashman fail at the trade deadline? Because when you look at the Yankees lineup with Stanton coming back, like they really didn't need to do that much with the lineup. The acquisition of Jazz Chisholm, it made sense. Third base was a hole. They fixed that hole. He got hurt. So you can't really put blame on Brian Cashman there. Stanton, he comes back. He's been a lift. He's been great all year. He's got 22 home runs on the year, over a 775 OPS, I believe a 777 on the year overall. So the lineup is good. Obviously with Soto and Judge, they're amazing. They're gonna lead this team to the playoffs, no doubt. Anthony Volpe, you'd like to see him start to lift up a little bit because he had a great start to the year, but since then he's just sucked. Over his last 50 games, in fact, he's hitting 220 with just 19 RBIs. But the lineup overall is good. The starting rotation is good. Garrett Cole, he's starting to pitch like Garrett Cole over his last 3 starts. He's got like a 1.5 ERA. He's got 22 strikeouts in his last 3 starts as well. So Garrett Cole is starting to pitch like Garrett Cole. Marcus Stroman had a good start in his last start. Carlos Rodon, he's winning. Somehow he's winning ball games. But he's pitching terrible. So is Nestor Cortez. But Louis Hill, he's been pitching good as of late as well. So the starting rotation and the lineup is good. But the bullpen has been terrible. Terrible. Tommy Canley, he's been good. He's actually been very good all year long. And Clay Holmes, I mean, he's got a 2.88 ERA. So when you do look at that, you say, hey, he ain't been that bad. But no, he's been terrible. I mean, he's blown a lot of games for the Yankees. I mean, you take away half those blown saves, and they have a sizable league on. You take away half those blown saves, the Yankees have a sizable lead in the AL East over the Orioles right now. So it is the bullpen. That is definitely the problem. And Brian Cashman, in a lot of people's opinions, failed at the trade deadline because the Mets, what they did at the trade deadline, they actually strengthened the bullpen. The Yankees, on the other hand, like it just goes to show you, you don't need to dive deep into your farm system and give up your top prospects to acquire bullpen talent. You don't. And Brian Cashman, he tried to be smart. Mark Leiter had 6 good starts, 6 or 7 good appearances before the trade deadline with Texas before coming to the Yankees. Cashman really thought he was going to be a good. I don't know, man. Cashman really messed up. But the Yankees, they're getting some good news but before we actually do get into the good news, because Clark Schmidt is tossing line BP, so that's some good news for the Yankees, especially in bullpen terms too, because they can either shift someone down to the bullpen. Like I think Rodon, maybe he could be a good bullpen arm, but who knows? Schmidt, I think when he comes back, he should be in the starting rotation because he was actually having a good year before he went down. Jazz Chisholm, he's resuming fielding. He's hoping to swing the bat pretty soon as well. And then the Yankees do need him back because that lineup, that third base is a hole once again. It is a hole once again. But yeah, the Yankees, I think it's a weird move by Brian Cashman also by calling up Jason Dominguez, having him hit against one of the best pitchers in AL Cy Young candidate, and then sending him right down the next game. The very next day. That to me makes no sense. So Brian Cashman, yeah, he's going to have some tough questions to face if the Yankees don't win the World Series. Because at this point, that's where they got to do. I've said it all year long, and I still think they can do it. I really do. You got Garrett Cole. Louis Hill is pitching. He's pitching great. Marcus Stroman, he's been up and down all year, but he's actually been pretty good. Had a pretty good start in his last start, so hopefully he can start get going a little bit more as well. And then obviously the lineup, you got Judge and Soto, probably the 2 best hitters in the American League this year. Maybe you could put Gunnar. Obviously Gunnar Henderson's up there. Bobby Witt Jr. is up there as well. But, Judge is definitely the best. Soto's up there as well. And then, obviously, like I said before, Cole in his last 3 starts, 1.59 ERA, 22 Ks. Stanton, he ain't too shabby either. 777 OPS, 22 home runs on the year. And that's with missing a lot of time. So you got all these guys. The Yankees, quite frankly, they need to achieve more than just a postseason run. They need to achieve a World Series. Because how long are you going to have Juan Soto? Is it just a 1-year thing? Because it's not a guarantee that he's coming back. Garrett Cole's not getting any younger. Aaron Judge isn't getting any younger. He's having another career year. He just hit his 300th career home run. On the year, Aaron Judge has 44 home runs, a 331 batting average, and 111 OPS with a 1.166 OPS. He could end his season today and still win the MVP. That's how good he's been. The Yankees cannot afford to let their bullpen bring them down this year. They cannot. And Brian Cashman, sending Dominguez down. The deadline moves requiring guys like Mark Leiter with a 6.48 ERA in 10 appearances. It's terrible. It's terrible. So did Cashman fail at the deadline? Yes, he did. Can the Yankees have playoff success with their bullpen? I don't know, but I think they need to shift some guys around because when you do look at the Yankees bullpen, they have some talented arms. I think if you take one, just stop putting Clay Holmes in high leverage situations. Like, stop. Just stop. And when Clark Schmidt comes back, like I said, it should help because before he did go down 2.52 ERA in 11 starts. That should help. Maybe they move someone out of the starting rotation. Who knows? Who knows? But you look at their overall bullpen numbers, and they honestly aren't that bad. Tommy Canley's having a lights out year. 1.74 ERA in 36 games this year. Who else they got? Michael Tonkin, he ain't having a bad year either. 3.21 ERA on the year. Jake Cousins, former Milwaukee Brewer. In 23 games, he's got a 2.1 ERA. And he hasn't done too bad in his last few appearances with the Yankees. In fact, in August, he's only allowed 1 earned run. So, there you go. They got to shift some things around. I mean, you got to get more of Jake Cousins. You got to get more of Tommy Canley. When Clark Schmidt comes back, maybe you move him to the bullpen again. Maybe you move someone like Rodon to the pen. Maybe you move someone like Nestor Cortez to the pen because obviously they've sucked all year. Rodon's got a 4.34 ERA. Nestor Cortez has a 4.2 ERA. And Nestor Cortez specifically, I mean, at this point, why not move him to the pen? Why not? Everybody's like, oh, well, he pitched great in 2022. But really, that outside of that year, he hasn't been a top pitcher. He hasn't been a front end of the rotation starter ever in his entire career outside of 2022. His last start wasn't too bad against Chicago, going 7 innings, only allowing 3 hits. But before that, against the Angels, allows 6 runs. Against the Phillies, allows 3. Against the Red Sox, allows 4. Against Tampa Bay, allows 6. Against Tampa Bay again, allows 5. Cortez has not been good. He's been too inconsistent. And Rodon, even though he's 13-8 on the year somehow, I don't know how he does it, but he's allowed 4 earned runs in his last start. Against Texas, he did have a good start, only allowing 3 hits. No earned runs allowed. But against Toronto, allows 3. Against Boston, he did allow 2. So he did have a good stretch of games, but I mean, really, he had a bad stretch in June against Atlanta. He let up 7. Against Toronto, he let up 8. That's a bad stretch. And against Boston, he let up 5. So he had a bad stretch of games in June. So he's just been up and down all year. So he's a candidate to move to the bullpen when Schmidt comes back as well. Because, the Yankees bullpen sucks. You need to do some shifting around if you're the Yankees. You definitely need to do some shifting around. Got to see more of Jake Cousins. Got to see more of Tommy Canley. And then even Cody Poteet, I think I'm saying his name right. He was cleared for a rehab assignment. He only had 4 games, 21 innings pitched, though. In 4 starts, he had 2.14 ERA. He's a guy that you could put in the bullpen. Maybe you get something out of him. But listen, injuries haven't helped. But the Yankees, they do have options. So it's really, I think, on Aaron Boone to manage his bullpen well. Kind of be more smart. If Clay Holmes has the most blown saves in the MLB, you would think analytically it would say, don't put him in high leverage situations. Simple as that. But we'll see. Yankees, if they're going to win, it's going to be because of guys like Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, though. All year they have been the guys. Judge, put up the numbers on the screen right there. 44 home runs, 111 RBIs, 331 batting average. And he had a slow start to the year, too, which is insane. It's insane. Let's actually go over Aaron Judge's numbers in his last 50 games because we went over Lindor's earlier. So let's just go over Judges. Just to put the MVP. Damn, stat moves down? Oh, no. Aaron Judge is hitting 379, 66 hits, 18 home runs, 47 RBIs in his last 50 games. With an OPS of 1.248. I mean, Judge is clearly the best hitter, best player in baseball. There's nobody better when he's on the field. And right now, I mean, he might be on pace to get 63 home runs. He really might. Hit 62 in 2022, and really nobody thought he could do it. But Yankees got, let's see. How many games do the Yankees have left? Yankees got 37 games left. So Judge got 34 games to hit 18 home runs. So that's a home run every other game. It's doable. It really is doable for Aaron Judge. So it's going to be tough to do, but if anybody can hit a home run every other game, we've seen it before in stretches. It's Aaron Judge who can do it. I mean, in his last 50 games, he hit how many home runs? 18 home runs in his last 50 games, so he's going to need to increase that number. Definitely. He needs 25, obviously, in the last 50 games to make home run every other game. But in his last 75 games, he did hit 31 home runs, so he's there. He's right there. He is right there. He could do it. Like I said, if there's anybody that can do it, it's Aaron Judge. And then Juan Soto, I mean, I think he would be an MVP candidate if it wasn't for Aaron Judge, man. He really would, because his numbers are also ridiculous. Second in the MLB with the 1.033 OPS, 87 RBIs, 34 home runs, 300 batting average. Juan Soto, man, having a career year in his first year in pinstripes. All right. Let's talk some football. Because Giants fans, they're getting all defensive about Daniel Jones throwing 2 picks in his preseason debut. Tommy DeVito. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to talk to Vito. Because Daniel Jones is getting paid the big bucks. He's going to start week 1 and all year long as he's healthy. DeVito, is it a conversation about him being QB2? Yes. But Daniel Jones, I mean, is his preseason performance alarming? Yes, it is. I mean, his numbers weren't great. 11 of 18, 138 passing yards was actually pretty high, especially for him. But the 2 interceptions weren't great. He also had a couple passes that definitely were questionable as well. A few incompletions that probably should have been turnovers if the defenders could have caught the ball. But Daniel Jones didn't look too sharp. But then again, it was his first game back in a long time, coming off a torn ACL. So you do got to give him some breathing room. But then again, he's a New York Giants quarterback. If he plays bad, everybody's going to be writing about it the next day. That's just the way it is when you're a New York quarterback, when you're a New York star. And he's getting paid the big bucks. He's got big expectations. And quite frankly, he should have big expectations because when you look at the Giants overall, they could make the playoffs. I've been saying it all off season. The Giants have a great defense. I think they have one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated defense in the National Football League. Brian Burns is going to be a problem. Dexter Lawrence, now that he has Brian Burns going at the passer as well, it's going to open so many more opportunities for him as well to get to the quarterback. Kayvon Thibodeau, he could take a leap forward. I mean, we keep forgetting he was a 5th overall pick. I mean, he had a great season last year as well. He took a major leap forward in his second season. And he seems like he's a little bit more mature. He came into camp in great shape. And with, like I said, with Burns, with Dexter Lawrence, with Azeez Ojulari, all going at the quarterback. It's going to open doors for everybody. Everybody. Deontay Banks is going to open doors for him as well in the secondary. Bobby Okereke, I mean, Micah McFadden, you got two good linebackers right there. The Giants defense is playoff caliber. I think it is playoff caliber. So it's up to the Giants offense. Can they get the job done? Just like similar to the Jets. Can the Jets offense get the job done? Because we already know that the Jets defense is going to be top notch. They had the highest PFF grade last year. But everybody's talking about the Jets defense. Nobody's talking about the Giants defense for some reason, but we got to start talking about it because I think this Giants defense is a playoff caliber defense. It is. But in reality, it is up to Daniel Jones. We'll see what he can do. Giants took a whopping loss, 28-10. The defense didn't play too great, but then again, obviously the starters weren't really playing. But if you do look at some highlights, Micah McFadden, he did have a good game. He had 4 tackles in his limited time on the field. Bobby Okereke also did what he does. Yeah, definitely when the season starts and the starters start, I think this Giants defense is going to be firing on all cylinders. That's what I'll say right there. But yeah, the rushing game, I mean, it's definitely going to be committee style for sure. Devin Singletary, he did get a touchdown, but overall on 10 carries, only 20 yards, only averaged 2 yards per carry. That's not good. That is not good. Eric Gray, he did have 18 yards. He averaged 6 yards a carry. He had a 13-yard rush as well. So, I mean, after a great rush, great game as well against Detroit in week 1 of the preseason, he had 52 yards on only 4 carries, and he also lit it up in the receiving game. 4 catches for 46 yards. And in game 2 against Houston, he did have 5 catches for 22 yards. So Eric Gray, I think he's a guy you got to keep an eye on heading into the season. Malik Neighbors, they were trying to get creative a little bit. He did get a rushing attempt. He got about 5 yards on that rushing play. He did get his first catch. He had 54 yards total in this performance. So 4 catches overall for him. So Malik Neighbors getting the ball a little bit more. And it obviously, when he gets the ball in his hands, he can make things happen. So, you know, we see it now a little bit more in this day and age in the NFL where receivers make an impact right away now. And Malik Neighbors, I mean, he could be that guy for the Giants. He is that good. So, yeah, you got to be excited about Malik Neighbors. And overall, the receiving room is pretty good. Darius Slayton, he had a good day, 3 receptions, 59 yards. So, you got him, Isaiah Hodgins. I mean, he had a pretty good year in 2022, so he's always a dark horse guy that you got to keep an eye on in that receiving room. And then Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt, I'm very high on. So the receiving room, they got it. Running back wise, I mean, committee style, maybe they can get the job done. It's the offensive line and Daniel Jones, the 2 most important pieces for the Giants. If they play good, the Giants could make the playoffs. I really think they could. Only time will tell, but listen, keep an eye on the Giants, man. Keep an eye on the Giants. Like I said before, I wouldn't panic too much on Daniel Jones's 2 interceptions because, like I said, it's his first game back coming off a torn ACL. It's preseason. We can't overreact. But he does need to play better. We can say that as well. He does need to play better. Someone who does need to play better, apparently, is Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers reports are suggesting that, well, not just reports, videos. He sucked in practice last week, and today specifically. I think he was like 11 of 27 on the day overall in practice. He had some good connections with Garrett Wilson, but other than that, Aaron Rodgers sucked. He actually threw a pick as well to Tony Adams. So Rodgers got to step it up. Definitely got to consider playing in the preseason now. I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't. I mean, the Giants are allowing Jones to get some reps in the preseason. He's obviously rusty. You would think that Rodgers is definitely even rustier coming off a torn Achilles at his age. I mean, he played 4 snaps last year. 4. He's got to play in the preseason. Simple as that. Simple as that. I mean, especially, he looks great with Garrett Wilson. He does look great with Garrett Wilson, but at the same time, with this offensive line, you add Tyron Smith, you add more Morgan Moses, you add John Simpson. Like, they got Elijah Vera Tucker, you're expecting him. He's back healthy. Joe Tippmann in his spot at center. They got expectations for him. The offensive line needs to get reps with Aaron Rodgers. And Rodgers needs reps with Garrett Wilson in live play. Simple as that. Because Garrett Wilson, I'm very high on. I really think he could become a top 5 wide receiver. I mean, he had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in his first 2 years in the league with Zach Wilson, with Chris Streveler, with who else did he have? As James Johnson at one point. Trevor Siemian. I mean, he's had terrible quarterbacks. And he's put up numbers. So with a 4-time MVP, Garrett Wilson, he could become a top 5 wide receiver. Easily. He is that good. He is that talented. When he gets the ball in his hands, just like Malik Neighbors, he's much better in my opinion, but that could be Jets bias. Who knows? But Garrett Wilson, when he gets the ball in his hands, he can do the work. So, and Breece Hall too. Breece Hall, I expect him to take an even bigger step forward. I mean, we saw him get over 1,500 scrimmage yards last year, 6 yards short of 1,000 yards. And that was with him coming off a torn ACL, having a slow start to the year. He wasn't getting that many carries. He was on a pitch count. So with Breece Hall, year 3, hopefully going into full swing right away, I expect him to take a major leap forward too. So definitely keep an eye on Breece Hall in the start of the season. And Sauce Gardner, he's getting big hits in practice. You love to see it. I mean, he's a high energy guy. Everybody talks crap about him outside of New York Jets fans, obviously. But, when you're that good, people are going to talk crap about you. But Sauce, defense expectations for the Jets. I mean, they were the number 1 graded defense according to PFF last year, and they were 7-10. So, I mean, with Rodgers now, it's really the offense. They're the make or break deal for the Jets this year. The defense is going to be good. You got Quentin Williams. You got Will McDonald, hopefully, who's going to take a step forward this year if Hasson Reddick really doesn't play for the Jets. John Franklin Myers, he's underrated as well. And then C.J. Mosley, the secondary is lights out. DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner's, when they're your 2 cornerbacks, they're going to lock up. So the Jets defense, they're going to be just fine. It's the offense. The offense is going to make or break the Jets season this year. So that's all I got for today. We definitely got to talk some Knicks on the upcoming show. So we'll definitely get into the Knicks on the upcoming pod. But Mets, they got some important games coming up. Baltimore, obviously, they got to do the business against them. But after that, they got another 2 tough opponents, 2 opponents that are ahead of them in the wild card race, San Diego, and then we head to Arizona on the road. A tough road trip for the Mets ahead. The Yankees, I mean, coming off 2 tough losses against a terrible Detroit Tigers team. They got to pick things up. They play again tomorrow against the Guardians. Louis Hill on the bump. And then the Guardians, they ain't too shabby this year. They're 72-52. Yankees, 73-52. They now have a half-game lead over the Baltimore Orioles in the AL East, thanks to the Mets taking care of business. So you're welcome, Yankees fans. Mets take care of business against the Orioles tonight, thanks to Francisco Alvarez walk-off home run, much-needed walk-off home run. But yeah, thank you for those watching. Whether you're on X, whether you're on YouTube, I appreciate you guys. But if you're on X, make sure you head over to the YouTube page, hit subscribe. We're a little over 300. Next goal is 400, so let's hit that pretty soon. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm out. Deuces.